Very little is known about Toru Adachi before the event of Persona 4, but we do know that in high school, Toru distanced himself from his peers and rejected any form of social life for his studies. This behavior would continue into university, but now he would begin to truly hate those around him. Later, Adachi would become a police detective, but despite all of his hard work, Adachi would constantly be passed up for younger, more talented detectives, only deepening Adachi's hatred. Eventually, Adachi would be stationed in the small country town of Inaba, where he would be partnered up with Ryotaro Dojima and would form his first meaningful bond with his partner as well as the older detective's daughter Nanako. Sometime later, Adachi would unknowingly come into contact with the goddess Izanami, who would then grant him the power of the persona, as well as the ability to access the hidden world inside of the TV. Adachi would realize his power upon seeing reporter Mayumi Yamano in the Midnight Channel, which rumors suggested would reveal one's soulmate. Not long after this, Adachi would be placed as protection for Mayumi due to having a scandal involving politician Taro Namatame, and while acting as her protection, Adachi would question her about the affair, and when she didn't deny being involved, Adachi would become enraged and would push her into a nearby TV, causing her death. Dojima's nephew Yu Narakami would then move in, and Adachi would begin to feel as though his friendship was threatened by the teen, very quickly growing envious of him. Only 2 days after her murder, Mayumi's body would reappear in the real world strung up on a telephone pole and would be discovered by high school student Saki Konishi. Adachi would then bring her in for questionings and would attempt to seduce her, but after she rejected his advances, Adachi would kill her the same way. Just before Saki's body would reappear, Taro Namatame would call to inform the police that there was connection to the Midnight Channel and the murders. However, Adachi would just so happen to be the only one present at the time and would insinuate that Namatame should save the victims himself by putting them somewhere safe. Adachi would then sit back and wait for things to unfold as another high school student, Yukiko Amagi, would go missing, having been kidnapped and thrown into a TV by Taro, but this time would be rescued by Yu and 2 others, Yosuke Hanamura and Shie Sadanaka, both friends of Yukiko. Adachi would eventually become knowledgeable about this new group calling themselves the Investigation Team and would begin to influence them by accidentally revealing sensitive information about the case, and in doing so would end up forming a bond with Yu. However, after almost a year, Taro would be arrested and the investigation team, through questioning him, would discover Adachi's involvement, cornering him. Faced with no other option, Adachi would then retreat into the TV world, but he would once again be cornered by the group who had followed him in and would be forced to fight them. However, Adachi would then be defeated and would attempt to kill himself before being possessed by the being Amano Sagiri. However, the investigation team would defeat this being and Adachi would be arrested after the fact. Months later, Adachi would send a letter to Yu, which would help the group discover Izanami's involvement and would ultimately save the world. In prison, Adachi would accept his sentence, serving as the model inmate while regularly being visited by Dojima. Goro Akechi was born to Masayoshi Shido and an unknown woman from whom he would inherit his last name. His mother would work as a prostitute to support her son, and though she seemed to truly love and care for him, due to the effect her death had on Goro, being shamed for giving birth out of wedlock, she would then commit suicide, leaving Goro to grow up alone and resentful of his father for abandoning them. Years later, Akechi would be given the ability to access the metaverse as well as the powers of the wild card, allowing him to use multiple personas by the god of control, Yaldabaoth. Then, posing as an upcoming detective, Goro would approach his father and using his powers would become Shido's personal assassin in an attempt to gain his trust and one day destroy Shido. Akechi would then use his father's influence as well as his personality and looks to become a celebrity, becoming known as the second coming of the Detective Prince. However, a group calling themselves the Phantom Thieves of Hearts would become known and Goro would be ordered to eliminate them, and over the following year track the group down and would even go on to form something of a bond with the group's leader Ren Amamiya before gaining proof of the group's powers. Later, still posing as the detective, Goro would confront the group and would blackmail them into stopping their activities after aiding him in one final job to steal the heart of prosecutor Sai Nishima, who was his friend as well as the elder sister of one of the Phantom Thief members. During this, Akechi would spring a trap on the thieves and Ren would be captured. Akechi would then use his influence to get a private audience with Ren and would seemingly assassinate him. However, the Phantom Thieves had figured him out and outsmarted him using a cognitive version of Ren to trick Goro. Later, Akechi would discover he had been tricked and would track them down to the palace of his father, where he would confront and fight the group, but would ultimately be defeated. Even though he had betrayed and tried to kill them, the Phantom Thieves would offer Akechi the chance to make things right and work with them to bring his father to justice. However, before he could make his decision, his father's cognitive version of himself would appear to assassinate him, as well as reveal that Shido had never cared for him and had been planning to have him killed the whole time. Akechi, now knowing the truth, would pretend to play along to his cognitive self's taunts, but would surprise it with a bullet to the gut before putting a shutter between the shadows and Phantom Thieves before making Ren promise to take his father's heart. Now stuck with his cognitive self and a group of powerful shadows, Akechi would supposedly give his life so that the Phantom Thieves could escape and bring Masayoshi Shido to justice. However, Akechi would then wake up on Christmas Eve and, after overhearing Ren inside discuss turning Ren in order to dismantle the rest of Shido's conspiracy, and either as a way to make it up to Ren or because of his desire to personally destroy what Shido had built, would offer to take Ren's place, being arrested and confessing everything. However, to his shock, he would be let go and soon after would notice several things that were out of place, finding that the cat Morgana had transformed into a human, Sai's father was alive, and that Wakaba Ishigi, Kunikazu Okumura, two people whom he had personally killed, were alive again. He would then go to contact Ren, finding that Ren had also noticed these changes, and that they, along with their mutual friend Samira Yoshizawa, would investigate a palace that they had discovered and ignored earlier. In the palace, Goro would begin to suspect that Samira had similarly been changed, while Ren called her Kasumi, the name of her twin sister who had died earlier in the year, and would have his suspicions confirmed by the palace ruler himself, who was revealed to be Ren's friend Dr. Maruki, who had changed the cognition of the world itself to make life easier for everyone. Samira, now joining Maruki, would refuse to accept reality and would fight Ren until the other Phantom Thieves came and similarly rejected Maruki. Now working with the Phantom Thieves one last time, Akechi and Samira would help them to take the palace. However, as Ren planned to give Maruki a calling card, Maruki would be forced to drop a revelation on them. That, as far as he knew, Akechi had in fact died in Shido's palace, but had now been brought back due to his power. Akechi, who had been listening in, would confront Maruki, and after being left alone, he and Ren would talk with Goro, admitting that he had suspected as much, and had already made up his mind that he would rather die of his own free will than spend another day as someone else's puppet. And so, Akechi would help the Phantom Thieves stop Maruki, and like the rest of his changes, Akechi's arrival on Christmas Eve would be undone, leaving his current fate unknown. Hello, and welcome everyone to a fight I'm sure some of you are actually very familiar with by now, as it's one I've actually done a video on before with Persona 4's Toru Adachi versus Persona 5's Goro Akechi, in a remake of the original video, but using updated scaling feats and a better analysis, due to my better understanding of Persona characters since that original video has gone up. Now, if you have seen that video, then truth be told, you don't actually have to watch this one, but I would still recommend and appreciate it, as the quality has significantly increased for this video. Right, with all that, let's once again start by comparing them physically. During the events of Persona 4, Toru is a 27-year-old human male standing at 5 feet 8 inches tall and weighing 139 pounds. As a police officer, it can reasonably be assumed that Adachi is in relatively good shape, and this is supported by his ability to effortlessly overpower Mayumi Yamano and Sakiko Nishi. In the TV world, his abilities are enhanced, putting him on par with characters like Yu Narukami and Ren Amamiya. Now, while Adachi doesn't have many feats of his own, considering that by Persona 4 Arena as well as the Golden Anime, he and Yu are considered to be even matches for each other, we can scale him to Yu. Yu has shown to be capable of breaking metal simply by throwing it to the ground and can cut through this coffin of a god, and match Ren Amamiya in single combat. Ren, being capable of damaging high-level shadows in melee combat, stayed standing during winds that blew over a pyramid, and matched Goro Akechi in single combat, who in the metaverse could carve his way through palaces all on his own, taking on several shadows on the same level: Kaneshiro, Madarame, and Sainajima. For speed, I'm gonna go straight to comparing him to Ren, as Ren has the more impressive speed feats, and Yu, as I said before, is evenly matched with Ren. And to jump right into it, Ren is incredibly fast, surpassing faster than light speeds before even reaching the final dungeon. He can dodge lightning sent his way by shadows during the first dungeon, can dodge Goro Akechi's laser pistol, and moved out of the way of the Big Bang Burger, which, as the name suggests, mimics the explosion of a Big Bang, which travels across star systems in seconds, and can keep up with Thor, a being from the Expanse, which, explained by Stephen Hawking, yes, that's Stephen Hawking, SMT is weird too, get used to it, as a higher dimensional plane that transcends past, present, and future, making Thor's speed immeasurable. Yet, Ren not only kept pace with this version of Thor, but beat it in single combat. Durability is a mixed bag, as his magic resistance is just as high as his other feats would suggest. However, Persona characters are consistently shown to take regular damage from physical attacks like you or me. In terms of his magic resistance, however, Adachi, just by the people he scales to, can tank, frankly, ridiculous amounts of magic damage. He's shown to be able to take punishment from members of the investigation team, same characters who then went on to take hits from Amino Sagiri, the avatar of the goddess Izanami, who is going to merge the TV world with the human world and should be on par with the endgame Phantom Thieves, who took multiple hits from several beings capable of merging their universe with another, giving Adachi similar, if not better, durability. At the time of Persona 5 Royal, Goro was an 18-year-old human male standing at 5 feet 10 inches and weighing 141 pounds. While not needing to be in great shape, it's likely that due to his vain nature, Akechi kept himself in decent shape for the sake of keeping up appearances. While in the metaverse, Goro's physical abilities were enhanced, putting him on the same level as characters like Ren Amamiya or Makoto Yuki. Goro in the metaverse was incredibly powerful. Being a match for Ren Amamiya, who himself matched Yuta Murakami, was able to withstand winds that blew over a pyramid, could cut through shadows with little effort, and while Akechi doesn't have many feats of his own, he did play a part in holding back Maruki's evolved persona with the other Phantom Thieves. With speed, again, we need to scale him to Ren, as he doesn't have any feats of his own that don't revolve around the Phantom Thieves leader. And considering that they're shown to be even physically, I feel fine using Ren feats in this area. So for this section, I'll hand it over to my good buddy, Rain. Take it away, Rain. Ren's physical boosts also extend to his speed, being able to evade bullets and missiles as well as energy blasts from Akechi's gun, jumped out of the way of an explosion, and in Persona Q2 kept pace with Yu, blocking all of his attacks and creating a stalemate with his gun. Thanks, Rain. Durability is a mixed bag. While Akechi can take one hell of a beating from magic damage, he was supposed to be killed by a gunshot. However, since Royal decided to go and muddy the waters with that one, we'll ignore it for now and focus on his magic resistance, which should be very high. He was tough enough to take hits from all members of the Phantom Thieves in his fight with them, and took a full power strike from the reality warping Dr. Maruki. Right, so truth be told, this category is a bit of a bitch because it mainly comes down to scaling, as both of these two directly scale to and are compared even in-universe directly to their respective wildcards, Yu and Ren. Strength-wise, Adachi's best feat actually comes from scaling to Persona 4 Arena Akihiko of all people, as Adachi is stated and shown several times to be Yu's equal, with Yu blocking several strikes from a serious Akihiko, with a younger and weaker Akihiko withstanding Nyx's gravity wave from Persona 3 all on his own. Meanwhile, Akechi's best feat is actually a direct one, where he is shown along with the majority of the Phantom Thieves to be able to hold off Maruki's full power attack. However, the difference being that unlike Akechi, Akihiko was able to withstand the gravity wave all on his own and kept fighting, meaning that through scaling, I believe Adachi is just a little bit stronger. They do match each other in speed, however. Both Adachi and Akechi scaling to Joker's speed when he faced and defeated the immeasurable Thor, and once again, even ignoring that, Yu has evenly clashed with Ren Amamiya after Ren has been shown to be capable of dodging a Big Bang explosion before he faced Adachi in combat. Durability is a bit tricky at this point, as you basically need to start counting how many universes these guys can tank to the face before needing to go down. But for once, I actually don't need to rely on scaling for this, as Akechi just straight up has better feats in this area, tanking a full power attack from Dr. Maruki, who is above beings like Yaldabaoth, Izanami, and Hino Kagasuchi. Meanwhile, ignoring scaling, Adachi's best durability feat is against Hino Kagasuchi, the weakest of these three, and with scaling, at best, he can tank hits from a serious Izanami, who is still not quite as strong as Maruki, giving Akechi the better durability. So just like with Akihiko versus Makoto, this fight comes down to better strength versus better durability, and just like that fight, I don't see either is advantage as enough to put either of these two over the other. And so, I grant no edge for physical abilities. Adachi will be bringing one weapon into this fight, a revolver which I believe to be the Nambu M60, as is a standard firearm for police in Japan. This revolver fires 9mm bullets, uses a 5-round cylinder, and has an effective firing range of 50 meters. Magatsu Izanagi will also be bringing in one weapon, that being his personal Naginata. Akechi will be bringing two weapons into this matchup. The first of which is a laser pistol that, despite not being based on a real gun, still somehow appears to work perfectly fine while in the metaverse. This weapon holds a total of 5 charges before needing to be reloaded. Akechi also wields a serrated sword around 4 feet in the bottom of the handle to the tip of the blade. The serrated blade both cutting and shredding at its opponent, causing extra physical damage, and would likely result in the target bleeding out faster than usual. Robin Hood wields a bow that fires bless arrows. Loki, however, wields to me what seems to be a bastard sword made from a superheated blade with a pair of tongue-like graspers serving as the grip. This category is even more simple than it was the first time around. Once again, Adachi has no answer to Akechi's serrated blade, only bringing a firearm into this fight. But then there's Akechi's laser pistol, which easily surpasses Adachi's Nambu revolver. Sure, they use the same amount of ammunition before needing to reload, but that is the only thing Adachi matches Akechi in. The laser pistol is going to hit much harder than the Nambu, and unlike Akechi's revolver, is actually firing projectiles that move fast enough to hit his opponent. When it comes down to Magatsu Izanagi's Naginata against Robin Hood's bow and arrows, I favor Robin Hood for its weapon's better range. And between Magatsu Izanagi's Naginata and Loki's Bastard Sword, I favor the Naginata as it has more length and seems like it would be easier to defend with. There is no contest. Akechi gets the edge in weapons and equipment. Adachi has one persona, that being Magatsu Izanagi, which is completely immune to bless and curse spells. Magatsu Izanagi is a well-rounded persona with buffs such as Heat Riser, which increases his strength, speed, and durability all at once, Power Charge, which more than doubles the damage of his next physical attack, as well as debuffs, which can remove any buff his opponent has been given. Adachi also has several methods of attack, including Curse, Electricity, and Wind Magic attacks, all of which should scale to Persona 5 Arena Ultimate's Yu Narukami, who, along with Adachi himself, after fusing their personas, was able to destroy...
Hinokagutsuchi.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. But the important part is that this demon is stated by Elizabeth to be born from humanity's desire for death, meaning that this demon was brought forth by the same energy that created Izanami and Yaldabaoth, being required by Yu and Ren respectively to have the will of the masses at their side in order to defeat. Yet, in Arena Ultimates, Yu and Adachi combining their power was enough to defeat this being. And considering this was an even effort for both Yu and Adachi, that means that Adachi's magic output should be nearing at least multiversal levels. Magatsu Izanagi also has the ability to inflict the effects of fear, which Adachi can then follow up with an insta-kill attack, and silence, which will disable a persona user's ability to summon their persona. Now, due to the gameplay of Persona 4, one could be mistaken in thinking that Magatsu Izanagi nullification of Blessed Curse spells are only due to game design, but this simply isn't the case, as all other incarnations of Magatsu Izanagi share this trait. Despite taking information from Royal, I will actually not be granting Akechi Hereward for the reason that doing so would actually greatly limit him as a combatant, as Hereward is gameplay-wise more or less a reskinned Loki. And furthermore, Akechi actually only had Hereward for a total of one battle, against Dr. Maruki, while technically under the influence of his alternate universe. Akechi has two personas, the first being Robin Hood, which is resistant to bless spells but weak to curse spells, and is specialized to deal bless and curse damage, but also has access to a powerful almighty spell, and finally has several physical attacks including Arrow Rain, hitting up to 6 times, and has the ability to buff physical attacks with Charge, doubling the damage output, as well as the skill Debilitate, which lowers all of his opponent's stats. He can heal some health and remove any status effects with Refresh as well. His more dangerous persona was named Loki, which blocked curse but is weak to bless damage, and is equally as specialized in attacks, mostly wielding powerful curse and almighty spells, as well as one fire spell with Margarion. Leviathan is a physical attack that deals out colossal physical damage. Loki also has the ability to buff all of his stats with Heat Riser, as well as the Master attack automatically buffing his attack at the start of a fight. Dekucha and Denkunga, which disable all stat buff and removes any debuff respectively, as well as the ability to erect shields to protect himself and reflect physical and magic attacks. Loki can also inflict the Despair status effect with the attack negative file, which if hit one-on-one is a death sentence. And finally, possesses a passive skill with a high rate of evasion for blessed spells that aren't instant kill attacks. Loki's most powerful ability, however, is the ability to induce psychotic breakdowns. However, when used on a persona wielder, this only seems to increase their power as a side effect of making them go psychotic, and as so, he will only use it on himself in combat. While I did use the updated Royal Akechi in this fight, this department really hasn't changed much. Starting with overall power, these two should both be hitting at multiversal levels, meaning their overall magic output is roughly the same. Magic abilities is still firmly in Adachi's favor. Despite Akechi technically having the harder hitting spells, the majority of his magic arsenal is ineffective against Magatsu Izanagi. Similarly, Akechi does have the better physical attacks, as Adachi's are better suited against groups of enemies, while Akechi has an insanely high power attack for a single opponent. When it comes to buffs and debuffs, both can dispel buffs for their opponents and debuffs put on themselves, so realistically, their support abilities won't play a factor in this fight, and will more or less just drag it out. But Adachi will be forced to deal with Akechi's magic shields head on. However, Adachi's greatest threat to Akechi would be his use of fear attack, to the point where if he inflicts fear, the match is over, as Ghastly Wail will kill Akechi instant. Additionally, Akechi's greatest threat to Adachi would be his use of the negative pile attack, which will leave Adachi defenseless and will eventually kill him. As for which of these being more likely for me, Adachi landing fear on Akechi is slightly more likely, as Adachi has 2 spells that can inflict the effect rather than Akechi's 1. So to sum it up, Adachi still gets the edge in persona abilities. As a former police officer in Japan, Adachi would have been trained in the art of Taiho Jutsu, a martial art developed by police to combat the growing violence post-World War II, and is mainly used for non-lethally capturing, disarming, and restraining suspects. However, I do have to question how skilled he is at using this, as in his only showing of physical combat, he got beaten up by a high schooler. Though, to be fair, he seemed enraged at the time, and may not have been thinking clearly. His biggest tactical weakness is his cocky nature, best shown in his fight with the investigation team, as in every version of this fight, rather than just shooting his enemies, he instead fought with them with his persona, even though he shouldn't have known that they were capable of dodging bullets at this point. However, it should be noted that while he was defeated, Adachi managed to temporarily hold his own against 7 other powerful persona users. Now, as a brief aside, I'd like to apologize to anyone who's seen the original Adachi vs Akechi video where I said that I think Magatsu Izanagi would be a mixture of forms 4 and 3, as I wasn't fully aware of what each form entailed at the time. However, after re-examining much of Adachi's fighting style, I am now confident in saying that Magatsu Izanagi isn't a well-rounded user of either of these forms, but a master of Form 5 Gemso, which taught the user to fight using a defensive, counter-based style backed up with heavy power blows to smash through an opponent's guard. From what little we see of Akechi using his blade, it seems to me that Akechi uses Form 1 Shicho, a form based using on groups that specializes in long sweeping motions to take down multiple opponents at a time. Though this form can easily be countered by a single well-trained opponent. Now, while I'm not comfortable in saying that Akechi has mastered this form, it's very likely that he's become familiar with it and can apply it in an effective manner, even holding his own against Ren, who used a style similar to Form 4, so I'll say that he is good enough to hold his own in this area. Tactically, Akechi is less of a fighter and more of an assassin, as he's been shown to line wait before ambushing his enemies, but has shown that he can operate and synergize with a team, even temporarily acting as the team's tactician, showing the ability to identify and utilize the strengths of his allies. With Robin Hood, there seems to be no close quarters combat options, as it prefers to stay back and fire its bow. With Loki, we only have one showing of its fighting ability, which showed it grappling with Arsene where it was defeated almost instantly. However, this showing is from the anime and quite frankly contradicts the events of the game. So while I can't say for certain how well Loki uses this fighting style, I don't have any other examples to draw from. Though it is likely he knows how to use his sword in some way, we just don't have any examples. Both Adachi and Akechi are formidable fighters who can take on powerful shadows and persona wielders with their skill alone. But when it comes down to it, only one can be the victor. In terms of close quarters combat, while Akechi does have the advantage of a sword, Adachi already has experience against and has gotten the upper hand on a sword wielding opponent, as seen in his fight with Sho Minazuki, whereas Adachi had the upper hand on and was using the twin sword using team. Also, Adachi has better hand-to-hand training, being a trained cop, while Akechi is more likely self-taught. That, along with his combative style as an assassin, means that he'd have less opportunity to refine his combat style, while Adachi would need to regularly train in order to stay as an active police detective. Not to mention, Taiho Jutsu specializes in disarmament of melee weapons. The personas is a no-brainer. Magatsu Izanagi has been shown to solo the majority of Yu's high-power persona collection with its weapon skills, while Akechi's personas are not shown or implied to have that level of skill with their weapons. In terms of tactics, while Adachi isn't shown to be a mastermind, Akechi's tactics as an assassin wouldn't really serve themselves to a one-on-one fight, so I don't really see there being any advantage in tactics. Overall, while Akechi is without a doubt an insanely skilled and powerful user, with Makoto Nijima admitting that one-on-one he would have slaughtered any of the thieves, and even pushing them to their limits in a 7 vs 1 fight against a provenly similarly skilled and powerful opponent like Adachi, with a combat style that directly counters his own, he's going to be in a bit of trouble. And so, I grant Adachi the edge in combat skills and tactics. Let's set up this fight. Let's say it takes place in Tokyo during the midnight hour. Goro Akechi wanders the empty streets of Shinjuku, occasionally passing a coffin in the streets, but there are no people. Even worse, shadows are everywhere, forcing him to sneak around in order to move safely, until eventually he comes across the first person he's seen since the Sky Chain. Making his way over to the man, Akechi quickly realizes something is off, and as Toru Adachi turns around, not only does Akechi recognize the serial killer, but his shadow-like appearance gives him all the confirmation he needs that he needs to take him out. Immediately, Akechi transforms, donning his Phantom Thief's attire and goes to summon Robin Hood. Adachi, a bit taken off guard, but not really bringing himself to care, chuckles and says, "Oh, what's this? Some sort of party trick?" before summoning his own persona, Magatsu Izanagi. Adachi would act first, turning his gun on Akechi, only planning on toying with the teen at first, but fires a reactionary shot when Goro dives to the side and fires his own laser pistol, just barely missing the older man. Though neither detective lands a direct hit, they now both know that this is a real engagement, and Robin Hood is the first persona to act, casting a bless spell as Magatsu Izanagi charges. But the spell would do nothing, giving Magatsu Izanagi the window to close in and slash at it. However, Robin Hood quickly recovers and once again tries to damage the other persona user with a spell, but just like last time, it has no effect. Akechi, knowing he needs to change up the fight, takes aim at Adachi only for the older detective to open fire, hitting him in the arm. Adachi would then walk over casually as Magatsu Izanagi would cast Mudun, taking out Robin Hood. Feeling his persona be destroyed, Akechi would cry out in pain, leaving him open for a sucker punch for Adachi, which would leave him on the ground. Adachi would then place his foot on the teen and would begin to taunt him, calling him every name in the book and shooting just next to the teen's head. But where he would really get to Akechi is by insulting his mother, saying something along the lines of, "What, was your mother too busy sleeping around to teach you respect, kid?" Now enraged, Akechi summons Loki and drives himself psychotic. Adachi, unsure of how to react, is thrown back from the sudden release of energy and looks up in a daze to see Akechi transform into his true state, who, now psychotic, would call out,
"You think you're special? You're just another piece of shit!"
Adachi, still off guard, isn't able to think of a proper response and counters simply by telling him to shut the hell up, with the fight resuming, with the two personas clashing in the air, cutting at each other with their weapons, unleashing every spell they can, and eventually getting into a grapple lock. Back with the wielders, Akechi is trying to slash at Adachi with his serrated sword, but the older man is staying just out of reach and running his mouth the entire time. Eventually, Akechi's anger would get the better of him and he would lunge at Adachi, only to immediately be disarmed and pulled into a chokehold. However, rather than end the fight then and there, Adachi forces Goro to watch as the personas go at it, believing this will be an easy victory. However, it's at that moment that Loki actually overpowers Magatsu Izanagi and slams it into a building, causing Adachi to lose his grip, and the moment he does, Akechi slams his head back, breaking Adachi's nose. Not giving the older detective time to react, Akechi jumps on Adachi and begins to mercilessly beat him. Back with the personas, Magatsu Izanagi has actually been pushed onto the defensive, but thanks to its defensive maneuvers, it's avoiding taking any real damage. This continues until Loki is about to try and smash through Magatsu Izanagi's defense, but it hesitates, as a feeling of terror overtakes Akechi and he also freezes, too terrified to move, as Magatsu Izanagi has finally been able to hit him with fear. And in that moment of hesitation, Magatsu Izanagi would swing his naginata, decapitating Loki. Akechi would feel the blow and would be stunned long enough for Adachi to kick the team off of him and grab his gun. In an act of desperation, Akechi would again summon Robin Hood, but Adachi, now knowing its weakness, would again cast Mudun, instantly destroying the persona. Akechi, once again feeling the complete destruction of Robin Hood, would fall to his knees, stunned, giving Adachi plenty of time to stroll over and put his gun against Akechi's head with a smug, "Game over, brat," before shooting him in the head, killing Akechi instantly. And with that, I declare Toru Adachi, the Inaba serial killer, the winner. Truth be told, looking back over these two, I was hoping the outcome would change. While I certainly do love Adachi, I can't hide my favoritism for Akechi. But, well, nothing really has changed information-wise from these two outside of updated scaling, so I can't really say I'm surprised with the results. All in all, these two are deadly persona wielders who one-on-one would massacre most other users, as they have both been shown to be able to stand up to entire teams of powerful persona users. But when you take a good look at their strengths and weaknesses, the answer is clear. To break it down, Adachi may have the strength advantage, but they're even in speed, and Akechi holds the durability advantage. So there really isn't much of an edge to be given there, as I just don't believe Adachi's strength is too much for Akechi to withstand, or that Akechi's durability is too much for Adachi to break through. Robin Hood stands no chance against Magatsu Izanagi thanks to its almost exclusive use of Bless and Curse, which Magatsu Izanagi is immune to. And Loki would certainly be more of a challenge with his buffs and shields, which would drag out the fight, possibly giving him more time to land a killing blow. However, Magatsu Izanagi has the advantage, once again being immune to all of his curse spells, limiting his offensive options. That, along with his larger variety in status effects and better combat skills, leads me to believe that Magatsu Izanagi is overall the better persona. But what do you think? Do you agree that Adachi has the skill and power to overwhelm the Pancake Boy, or do you think that Akechi could easily handle the egocentric police stick? Share your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below, and if I got anything wrong, please feel free to correct me. And as always, I'm Rain932, and I will see you next time.